I've always had this fascination with officiality, convoys, everything presidential or regal, you know. And another world, obviously, always that has also been open, or that had been opened by knowledge, by reading. I read about everyone and everything under the sun, and that is why I always emphasize the importance of reading, because it really opens up your mind. So I've always had this dream of going to the matric ball, seeing that you were head leader as well, in a convoy with bodyguards and all of that. And full well knowing that my parents couldn't necessarily give that to me. So what did I do? Now remember, I had said that I had written a play when I was in standard 7. That play was, I dusted that play off in grade 12. I asked some of my old actors who played in it whether they wanted to star it again, because I wanted to show it at my primary school, because they agreed that I could come and show it there. So they said yes. I think I made 1,200 Rand at Dane Ackerman with that performance. I then compiled like a sort of portfolio of all of my achievements and newspaper clippings, etc. And as I said, compiled a portfolio, and I sent it to Somerset Mall. Somerset Mall then came back to me and said they are going to sponsor. They have spoken to Exact, and Exact will be sponsoring the clothes for my matric ball. I got from Robin Malan, who is a comrade, a very respected writer, LGBTIQ activist, and a doyen of our people, our pink people, especially in Cape Town and through Triangle Projects. Robin also gave me a sponsorship, because I was then part of Gabby's, the gay and bisexual young men support group. He also helped. I had to call, my mother was a domestic worker, so I contacted the white people, her employers directly, and she wasn't too happy with that. And this is another thing that I have a sort of gripe with, and I'm not saying there are expectations, but there are just some of these employers that are just horrible, you know, in the sense of, if you see that your employer's child, because this is how I look at life today, wouldn't you want to extend a helping hand? But they just never did. And my mother was so upset with me. Anyways, I think I got like 200 or 400 Rand from them. And one or two other sponsorships, yes. And the day of my matric ball, my dream came true, but that dream came true with an additional caveat. Khalil, who was a head boy and my deputy chairperson, and then caught wind that I was planning to arrive in style. And Khalil being Khalil, I love you, Khalil. Khalil said, Lindsay, I heard that this is what you're planning. Why don't we go half-half on the limousine that you intend to get, which was a 1974 Cadillac Seville limousine. A moose car, a big car, gorgeous car. I think it was still Classic Motors somewhere in the south of Cape Town. Was it the east of Cape Town? No, Cape Town South, the South Peninsula. So So, and I think the car was about 600 rand or something like that, and then he was supposed to pay a deposit as well of 600 rand. Yeah. And then Khalil says to me, let's say we go half-half. And I said, but that works for me. And it's one thing for me. And let me put it this way. If I had a devious or dubious personality, I would have kept everything quiet because I wanted to make an entrance. And there are some people like that out there. And I have encountered them through my life. And that's fine. We are all different. It's just not me. And as I said, I could have said no. But why say no? Because as Khalil asked me that, it dawned on me. The president and the vice president in the same car are with our partners, like Nigeria. And of course, it meant less strain for me, of course, financially. Then from there, Keith Knop then came, and Keith said to me, Lindsay, so you have the president, you've got the vice president, so of course you need the army chief as well. So I'm going to be the army chief, and I'm not going to mention the other things. You must read that in the book because I might get in trouble. You know, I don't want other people to get in trouble. But just to say that the evening of the matric ball, we were driving in a 7 or 8 car convoy with police lights and being led by traffic cops, and the whole M2 being cordoned off for our convoy. Oh fuck, it was fantastic. I'm reliving it in my mind. And that is who I am. That is why I can't stand people who fucking feel sorry for themselves. I can't stand people who constantly complain and that they do fuck all to change their lives. Always want other people to take pity on them. That is fucking bullshit. University of Stellenbosch. Here you are, the original owners of the land, and here you are studying at the bastion of Afrikaner nationalism, the birthplace of apartheid, where Hendrik Verwoerd once roamed, and where the majority of the apartheid legends and instigators came from, and where they studied. This was their bastion, as I said. And here you find yourself with a boss and madam in the same class. And of course you are highly intelligent, so sometimes the Klein Noy and Klein Boss can't understand but why you are so clever. You're more clever than them. And Stellenbosch in itself was also very unique, complex, very dynamic, very bipolar place. You can have a very lovely time at this place and then be barred at the next bar because you are of color. Of course, whenever you arrive there with your white friends, it wouldn't be a problem. And sometimes if it would become a problem, your white friends, especially the ones from Europe, would be totally confused because they never expected this type of thing to still exist in South Africa. And it does exist, and people need to realize that it exists. And I will continue to talk about racism until I'm fucking blue in the face. We need to make people feel uncomfortable. And of course, that doesn't necessarily mean from one to the other, but wherever it rears its fucking ugly head. The same thing for ethno-nationalism and all of and tribalism, all of the cuck that goes with it. Totally against it. Totally. Nevertheless, and then already explained about German, but then just excelling academically as well. and the first official boyfriend, and the awkwardness, and living in a house with 4-5 other gay people. They called the house in Isles Valley Moffingham Palace. Oh, we've had some interesting moments in that house anyways. And then graduating 2 years later because of fucking economics. And then it's not even like pure economics. I'm here talking about economics 101, which is basically theoretical economics, and basically just write essays and shit. But yeah, that was that. Yes, so that was the background to why I considered myself as having been unapologetically me. And I forgot what I had to say. Not that, I was shooting something earlier.
My formative education was obtained from Ellerslie Primary in Canada, which was basically a insurance school graded in Canada. And from there, in 1994, so from 1983 and 1994, I had been staying with my aunt in Canada. Of course, I will give some more context later. But just in terms of education, then from
Yes, so that should just give like sort of an indication to the personality. Canada was also a place of community. You could walk and be outside late and nobody would probably all bother you. But of course, the challenge for these small towns are, especially in the age of globalization, is viability, because you do have a brain drain where the young people are all moving out. The productive ones, well, sorry, not really productive ones, because that sounds bad, doesn't it? Didn't mean it like that. Those ones that do not see a future for themselves, they would then move out. And of course, this you see all across the country, not only in South Africa, but across the world as well. So, urbanization and brain drain, that is a consequence of globalization and the socio-economic pressures that people face in these small towns. So that is one element to the Pink Diplomat. Of course, you have to read the book, the autobiography, to get a deeper understanding, but I hope that sort of just like explains some things. So high school was fantastic because I went to Gordon High School, and these are some of the best teachers to me in the country. Most of the teachers there had gone to the school, so there is that affinity as well. And of course, Gordon High itself has got a very rich history, and it's got some illustrious alumni, like Gideon Sam, who was the president or the chairperson of the South African Olympic Committee. Aaron Busak, former South African ambassador to Switzerland. Yes, I know the scandals and all of that, but he's still an alumni, and he was a former anti-apartheid activist. So he deserves that respect. Of course, I had done an auction with him. I think it was the 50th celebrations of the school. Anyways, sarcasm. So it was also one of those schools that after the riot started in Soweto, Gordon High School was one of the first schools to start rioting in what was then called the Cape Province. So it does have that struggle history and struggle credentials as well. I was a leader in high school. I was elected class leader from grade 8 to grade 12. I served on the Student Representative Council from grade 8 straight until grade 12. I was elected the chairperson of the Student Representative Council as well as the deputy head boy. Now we had these two bodies at school, and I have been arguing with Khalil, who was the head boy, and then my deputy on the SRC, about me having been the head leader by virtue of representing the interests of the students. Now, of course, he doesn't agree, but, well, my opinion counts, Khalil. I still love you. So, head leader of Warren High School, excelling academically, always being the second in the grade, straight through from grade 8 until grade 12, having been awarded the school's Principal's Award twice, once in grade 11 and once in grade 12, for my exceptional contribution to the school and the wider community. And I was the first person to receive it twice, and the first grade 11 learner. Then at the age of 15, when I was in grade 9, being when I wrote my first play. And because before then I've written some very flowery and interesting poems, very political poems. I just hope that they remain needed somewhere. But it was a young mind, you know. Sometimes young people, even though we sometimes think that we know everything and we're so clever, and turns out we actually don't know such a lot. And that is important because I had also taken out a library card and I started reading. And this was also sort of like a whole new world opening up, and getting to know about our own country's history, and getting to know about the lie and what it means when they say his story, because essentially that is what history is. Just checking, because this thing started to break yesterday. The charger, that is, and the input. So that was that. So I'm plaiting my hair because I'm shooting some scenes later for my YouTube channel. Of course, hair is a very important topic in the community that I come from, and I will also, well, let me touch on it now, seeing that we're busy with it. You know, it's very sad that because of the effects of colonialism and apartheid, that so-called colored people in South Africa are still sort of some, or the majority in my opinion, still suffer from this colonial hangover. Still the only group, I think, in South Africa that still hasn't come to terms with the new South Africa. Because we must remember that colored people were sort of like seen as the second best group in the country under apartheid. And this in itself had caused a lot of friction amongst so-called colored people and black people in the country. And that is also something that still needs to be thoroughly discussed, I think. Nevertheless, So being 15 and then writing my first play about a gay boy coming out of the closet, and the added element back then, because HIV was then the pandemic of serious concern, people were dying all around us, and HIV/AIDS at that time was the silent pandemic. Nobody wanted to speak about it because it was supposed to be a non-topic, a non-discussion. And the saddest thing, of course, is that people were dying, as I said, all around you, and people would just speak about it in hushed tones. And then me being 15, 16, writing this play, and not even thinking that, hey, these are quite sensitive topics. But then again, that ties in with what I said previously, living unapologetically. I won't even say assuming, but I mean, if you live in a so-called free society and these are your ideas, wouldn't you want to express it? So that was always my vantage point, that, hey, I'm a citizen, I'm allowed to express myself. That is why I've never gone into a situation feeling like a victim, first and foremost, and number two, feeling like, oh, I'm gay, I can't do this, I can't do that. And let's face it, there are some of my pink members who are like that. They are victims even before they are victimized. And it is important to look, I'm effeminate, I'm flamboyant, so I've had my fair share of homophobia, I've had my fair share of that shit, so it's not as if it hasn't really happened to me, so let me just put that out there as well. Is that you must always stand your ground. The minute you show fear, my darling, they've got you. Don't show fear. Don't be a willing victim. Fight back with your mouth, fight back with your mind, fight back with your body, physically, whatever. But don't be a lamb to the slaughter. There is no dignity in being a willing victim. And I just said to myself, I'm not going to be anyone's willing victim. And whenever I had experienced situations of attempted bullying, like the one time with the one student boy from the Strand, actually, he had a, what would you call it? I think he had polio when he was a baby. So I think the one leg was shorter, so he was disabled. And they called him Hoppy. And for some other reason, he thought that he could bully me. And it's only much later on that I realized where this was coming from, because clearly he was also being bullied, and of course people laugh. And then it's only natural that if you think now you've got an opportunity to bully someone else that you think is weaker than you, then you are going to do it. And I sincerely hope that he's doing okay wherever he is, but nevertheless, that situation resolved himself or itself as well. And then there was the other one in Garden Village, in the urban area that I had then moved to when I went to go and live with my parents, where this one boy, because remember I come from Kanarandal, there I was protected, and sometimes we would beat children up or rob them of their food. Yeah, I was a kind of little bully, a little queen bully, yo, rover mates. Anyways, so you would let it slide once or twice until the fourth or fifth time that I decided, hi corner, this is not going to happen again. And this day, he still came for me, and I picked up a stone and I threw this with the stone like this big, yeah, like that, open gash. He never ever fucked with me again. Yes. So you have to, well, once again stating, if you're gay, and especially if you're effeminate, you can't go and cower, darling. You can't go and cower. Yes, it's easy to say, but I have been in a situation where I even had to fight for my life. And we'll talk about that later as well. So that's the high school years. And as I said, for more information on that, please get the autobiography of the Big Diplomat, where we'll go into detail about some more stuff. So what is the next point that I wanted to make? Yeah. Then I already mentioned Garden Village, working class suburb next to the N2 in Somerset West, where I had then moved to in 1994. I lived with my mum, my dad, and my two sisters. My older sister was married by then, a year into her marriage. And Somerset West was just an interesting place, but also a sense of community. And of course, I already spoke about my high school years, so that ties in with Garden Village. Not much to say. And then there is one interesting aspect, though, of my high school years too, that I actually want to emphasize before I continue on to the next point. And that is, before I was accepted to go and study at the University of Stellenbosch, yes, darling, Ivy League South African style, we had to write entry exams for bursaries and all of that. And there was this one teacher, and I won't mention his name because I know who he is, very tall with glasses, from the Strand, Muslim, who was responsible for, not that it matters that he's Muslim, but to those people that know, I want them to know who this is, without me mentioning a name. Anyways, I remember he would sometimes supervise the class when a teacher was absent for the day. And he was busy with the blue book. Now, this blue book contained the marks of the matriculants. And he was busy doing an assessment to see or determine who should go and write these entry tests. Now, naturally, having always finished second after Alistair Daniels, who today is the principal of Hottentots Holland High School, the Wendy School, the former white school, all the colours are there, all the colours are there now, the posh colours, apparently so. Good job, Alistair. Wonderful guy, very decent. I always followed these tracks academically, so he was first and I was always second. And it's not as if this gentleman who was the teacher did not know this. I mean, really. And I think it was fate. It must have been fate that day. He was supervising, I think we had biology that day, and Mr. Paulser wasn't there. It was Mr. Paulser or Mr. Simons. So Mr. Simons was one of the two. And he was sitting in front of the class. It's like I can imagine it happening. And I saw him busy with this book. And I'm very intuitive. And I was like wondering, what's happening there? Went to the front and asked, "So waarmee is meneer besig? What is he busy with?" And he says to me, "Oh, I'm busy with the marks for university entry." And now I see all, I think it was about 19 or 20 names. And they're all from the C and D class, 12C and 12D. Now, and apparently in that packing order that had existed there, like the now deceased President of the United States during the Second World War and prior, Franklin Delano Roosevelt had said in the Congress of the United States a day after Pearl Harbor had been attacked, had said that a state of war had existed. And that is why So that's why I said had existed as a sort of satirical reference to that speech to anyone that's interested remotely in that shite. Anyways, I then called him out and I said, but you do know that I am second in the grade, so why isn't my name there? And then he reluctantly, and then from there I went to the school principal, who was Mr. Simons. And I said to him, but what is this? Why is this man refusing to add my name onto that list? Who the hell is he to determine who should go to university and who shouldn't go to university? And of course, he then had to add my name. We went to go write these fucking exams, and of course I got in, and most of the others didn't. We were probably about only 7 that got in, and I think about 4 or 5 got full bursaries. So this is the shit that, yes, very supportive teachers and all of that, and largely so. But then you had situations and teachers like that who would stick it to you if they could, because they simply didn't like you. And I think to this teacher, I think it was an affront to him that I was so gay and just out there and that nobody seemed to care. But of course he was a teacher and he had to do his job. And when he could, he nearly fucked me over. And it was also probably another indication, once again, of how some people in this business, I had always had to fight for what you want. So if you want to understand this personality, that is one of the reasons.